Something's missing with this kid. This kid talks. He runs his mouth like I could be a starting quarterback with his arms crossed like this. Get your ass in the front row and study and do all that. If I know, the whole league knows. Quit being an embarrassment that way. You got the talent to be the quarterback. You should be. You should be embarrassed that you're not the quarterback now.
What if I told you the Cleveland Browns locker room just became ground zero for a beef so savage it's not even about football? It's about fame, money, and a legendary last name. We've got new explosive details from inside the facility that prove this quarterback competition isn't just about the depth chart anymore. It's personal, and one star just had a meltdown that's gonna shock the entire NFL. The Cleveland Browns quarterback room just became a war zone, and what's unfolding inside that facility is absolutely insane. According to multiple insiders with direct knowledge of the situation, Dillon Gabriel completely and utterly lost it after finding out that Shedeur Sanders, not him, was personally invited by Nike to headline their upcoming next-gen football showcase in Los Angeles. This isn't just some routine marketing event we're talking about here. This is Nike's premier showcase for rising NFL stars, scheduled for next week, featuring the brand's most marketable young athletes across the entire league. Shedeur Sanders was chosen as one of the faces of the campaign, his name and image plastered across Nike's promotional materials. But Dillon Gabriel, he wasn't even on the list. He wasn't considered. He wasn't invited. And when that news broke inside the Browns facility, all hell broke loose in spectacular fashion. Sources inside the locker room, people who witnessed this firsthand, say Dillon Gabriel absolutely snapped after seeing Shedeur's name trending online alongside other Nike elite athletes like Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud. We're not talking about a mild frustration or a quiet disappointment here. One player who was there reportedly described it as a full-on no-holds-barred meltdown that shocked everyone in the vicinity. Gabriel was overheard slamming his locker so hard that the sound echoed through the facility, and he was shouting at the top of his lungs, "They only care about his last name, not his game." The raw emotion, the anger, the frustration, it was all pouring out in a way that made everyone around him deeply uncomfortable. Teammates immediately tried to calm Dillon down. Multiple players approached him, attempting to talk him off the ledge, but the damage was already done. The outburst had happened, people had heard it, and now everyone knew exactly how Gabriel felt about being passed over for Shedeur Sanders. Players who were present said the tension in that locker room was absolutely palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Gabriel was pacing around like a caged animal, muttering under his breath about favoritism, about how the system is rigged, about how nobody appreciates what he's accomplished. Meanwhile, Shedeur stayed completely silent throughout the entire episode, calmly scrolling on his phone. And here's the kicker, smiling slightly when teammates came over to congratulate him on the Nike opportunity. The contrast between their reactions couldn't have been more stark or more telling. But here's where this story gets even messier, where the layers of behind-the-scenes maneuvering start to peel back and reveal just how calculated and brutal the business side of professional football can be. Word is that Dillon Gabriel had actually been expecting the Nike invite. This wasn't a situation where he was caught off guard by not being considered. Sources with knowledge of the negotiations say Gabriel's agent had been in active talks with Nike representatives for weeks, carefully positioning Gabriel as the ultimate underdog story. They were selling the narrative of the walk-on who became a Heisman finalist, the player who clawed his way from obscurity to an NFL starting job through sheer determination and performance. It's a compelling story, the kind of narrative that brands usually eat up. Gabriel's camp thought they had it locked down. They thought the deal was essentially done. Then Nike pulled the plug, and they did it quietly with no warning, no explanation, no courtesy call to Gabriel or his representation. Gabriel found out he'd been passed over the same way the rest of the world did, through a Nike Instagram post featuring Shedeur Sanders front and center, draped in custom Nike gear that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The caption read, "The future isn't waiting. It's already here," accompanied by dramatic photos of Shedeur looking like he was born to be a Nike athlete. The comment section exploded immediately, turning into pure, unfiltered chaos. Fans from every corner of the internet piled on with takes that ranged from supportive to absolutely brutal. The comments told the whole story of how the public perceives this rivalry. Shedeur really got the whole league pressed, one user wrote, followed by laughing emojis. Nike can't risk their star power when he isn't seen. Sorry, Dillon, another chimed in. But it was this comment that apparently sent Gabriel completely over the edge. Gabriel's stats are solid, but let's be real, nobody's buying his jersey. That observation, cold and cutting as it was, hit on the fundamental truth that Gabriel is now being forced to confront. In today's NFL, performance on the field is only part of the equation. Marketability, cultural relevance, the ability to move merchandise, and generate buzz. These factors matter enormously, and Shedeur Sanders has them in abundance while Dillon Gabriel simply doesn't. The Browns' social media team desperately tried to keep the locker room meltdown quiet, implementing damage control protocols and hoping the story would stay contained within the facility. But in today's connected world where everyone has a smartphone and loose lips are everywhere, that hope was completely unrealistic. Within hours, not days, but hours, Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it this week was absolutely flooded with posts about Dillon Gabriel's jealous reaction. The takes were coming in hot and heavy from all directions. Dillon Gabriel jealous again. Man, Shedeur keeps winning on and off the field. Imagine getting mad because Nike wants Shedeur Sanders, not you. You can't market mid. Gabriel needs to accept reality. Shedeur is the future and Dillon is just a placeholder. By evening, the phrase Nike effect was trending nationwide, becoming a catch-all term for how brand partnerships and marketability have become just as important as on-field performance in determining which players get opportunities and recognition. Sports talk shows dedicated entire segments to the controversy. Podcasters jumped on it immediately. YouTube channels cranked out reaction videos. The story had taken on a life of its own, spiraling far beyond the walls of the Browns facility and becoming a national conversation about what really matters in professional sports today. But here's the twist that makes this situation even more complex and revealing. This isn't just about sneakers and photo shoots and Instagram posts. According to sources close to the brand, people who understand how these decisions get made at the highest levels, Nike's decision to choose Shedeur over Dillon has much deeper roots than simple on-field performance metrics. According to these insiders, Nike executives specifically wanted quarterbacks who could transcend football, players who exist in the cultural consciousness beyond just sports fans. They wanted cultural icons, not just guys with impressive stat sheets. They wanted players who could sell products to people who don't even watch football regularly. Shedeur Sanders fits that mold absolutely perfectly. His Instagram following rivals some legitimate Hollywood A-listers with millions of engaged followers who care about his fashion choices, his lifestyle, his opinions on everything from music to social issues. His every move gets dissected on sports talk shows, analyzed on social media, turned into memes and trending topics. His name alone, the Sanders name, generates headlines and clicks and engagement. Dillon Gabriel, for all his accomplishments and his genuinely great college career and solid NFL debut season, has essentially zero cultural pull outside hardcore football circles. He's respected by people who study the game, appreciated by fans who watch every snap, but he's not moving the cultural needle in any meaningful way. One marketing executive who works in sports endorsements and spoke on condition of anonymity because they're not authorized to discuss Nike's internal decision-making put it bluntly and brutally. Gabriel's problem isn't his talent, it's that nobody cares about his story anymore. The walk-on narrative is played out. We've heard it a million times. Shedeur's story sells itself. The son, the pressure of living up to an iconic father, the swagger, the confidence that borders on arrogance but backs it up on the field. That's what moves product. That's what gets people talking. That's what translates to sales. And apparently Dillon Gabriel knows all of this on some level. He understands the reality of his situation, which is probably why his reaction was so explosive and emotional. ESPN's cameras even caught the fallout during practice the next morning, providing visual evidence of how this controversy is affecting Gabriel's performance. He was visibly frustrated throughout the entire session, throwing off his rhythm on plays he normally executes flawlessly, missing easy passes that should be automatic for a quarterback of his caliber. His body language was completely off. Shoulders slumped, minimal eye contact with receivers, none of the usual energy and enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Shedeur went about his business with an almost zen-like calm, confident and composed, seemingly unbothered by any of the drama swirling around him. After practice, he even spent time signing autographs for fans who had gathered along the fence, taking photos, chatting with kids. When one young fan asked him about the Nike event, Shedeur flashed that trademark smile and said, "Going to make sure Cleveland's represented right. Simple, classy, and perfectly calibrated for maximum positive impact." The optics couldn't possibly be worse for Dillon Gabriel. Beat writers who cover the Browns daily noticed the contrast immediately and started filing stories about the stark difference in how the two quarterbacks are handling the situation. One reporter described Gabriel as emotionally checked out during drills, going through the motions, but clearly not mentally present. Another noted that Gabriel barely made eye contact with coaches during the film review session, staring at the screen but not really engaging with the coaching points. A third claimed Gabriel was seen arguing with offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt on the sideline after a particular play sequence, though the Browns' official PR department quickly denied that anything confrontational happened, calling it just a normal coaching conversation. When reporters finally got access to Shedeur and asked him about the Nike event, he kept his response simple, professional, and completely bulletproof. "I'm grateful for the opportunity. That's all I'll say." Clean, measured, giving reporters absolutely nothing controversial to work with while still acknowledging the situation. His composure under what could have been an awkward media spotlight was remarkable, especially for someone so young. But that quote, as innocuous as it was, only fueled the fire of this controversy because Dillon Gabriel's silence in contrast spoke volumes about his mental state. Reporters say Gabriel refused media availability altogether following that practice, completely breaking from his normal routine. He stormed out of the locker room after getting dressed, walking past the assembled media members without a single word, without making eye contact. His face set in a hard expression that made it clear he had no interest in addressing the elephant in the room. One beat writer who's covered the Browns for over a decade described the moment as the point where the quarterback rivalry became personal, where it stopped being about football competition and became about egos and hurt feelings and resentment. And in the locker room itself, the situation is creating fractures that could have serious implications for team chemistry. Sources claim veteran players are increasingly frustrated with Gabriel's attitude, viewing the outburst over a Nike event as immature and selfish, especially during a crucial period of preparation. One anonymous offensive lineman, someone who's been in the league long enough to understand how these situations can poison a locker room, told reporters bluntly, "We've got real games to win. This Nike drama, that's noise." If Dillon can't handle Shedeur getting shine, maybe he's not built for this league. Champions don't have time for jealousy. They focus on what they can control and let their play do the talking. That's a devastating assessment coming from a teammate, the kind of quote that gets remembered and brought up for years. But it's not a unanimous sentiment. Younger players on the roster reportedly sympathize with Gabriel's frustration, seeing the situation from a different perspective. Several rookies feel that Shedeur gets preferential treatment simply because of his name recognition, not necessarily because of his on-field performance or achievements. One defensive back, speaking off the record because he doesn't want to get caught up in the media firestorm, said, "Dillon's right to be pissed. He threw for over 4,000 yards last season. Shedeur barely cracked 3,200. But Shedeur gets the Nike deal. That's messed up. That tells you everything about what this league really values. It's not about what you do on Sundays. It's about how many Instagram followers you have." The stats do tell an interesting story that supports Gabriel's frustration. Let's look at the numbers from last season with complete objectivity. Dillon Gabriel's statistics show 4,127 passing yards, 32 touchdowns against 11 interceptions, and a 67.8% completion rate. Those are legitimately impressive numbers for any quarterback, especially someone in essentially his rookie NFL season. Shedeur's numbers from the same period were 3,214 yards, 24 touchdowns against 9 interceptions, and a 65.1% completion rate. On paper, looking purely at traditional quarterback metrics, Gabriel outperformed Shedeur across the board. He threw for more yards, more touchdowns, completed a higher percentage of his passes. If you're evaluating purely on statistical production, Gabriel has the edge. But here's what the traditional statistics don't show, what the box scores and analytics dashboards completely miss. Shedeur's jersey sales doubled Gabriel's throughout the season. When the Browns released their merchandise sales figures, Shedeur was second on the entire team despite not being the primary starter for most of the year. Shedeur's social media engagement tripled Gabriel's, with his posts consistently getting hundreds of thousands of likes and thousands of comments, while Gabriel's content barely registered with casual fans. And when Nike ran ran internal polls and focus groups, asking fans which quarterback they'd rather see in a commercial, which face they wanted representing the brand. Shedeur won by an absolute landslide. It wasn't even close. Nike's research showed that Shedeur's appeal extended far beyond football fans, reaching demographics that Gabriel couldn't touch. This is the brutal reality of modern professional sports. It's not about performance anymore, at least not exclusively. It's about brand, about cultural relevance, about the ability to generate buzz and move product and create moments that transcend the actual games. Shedeur Sanders has that quality in abundance. Dillon Gabriel, despite his superior statistics, simply doesn't, and that reality is eating Gabriel alive from the inside out. Inside sources claimed that Kevin Stefanski, trying to be proactive about a situation that was clearly spiraling out of control, called both players into a private meeting later that day, hoping to diffuse the tension before it became a permanent problem. But according to someone familiar with what happened in that room, the meeting didn't go well at all. It might have actually made things worse. Stefanski tried his standard approach, emphasizing team unity above all else, reminding both quarterbacks that their job, their only job, is winning games and bringing championships to Cleveland, not chasing endorsement deals or social media clout. Dillon Gabriel reportedly wasn't having any of it. According to sources, Gabriel accused the organization itself of playing favorites, of systematically giving Shedeur advantages that he never received. He allegedly pointed to multiple examples, how the Browns' social media accounts consistently highlight Shedeur's plays and accomplishments over his own, how Shedeur gets more promotional appearances and media opportunities, how ownership clearly prioritizes accommodating Shedeur's schedule and preferences. Gabriel's frustration had apparently been building for months, and it all came pouring out in this meeting. Stefanski tried to push back against these accusations, attempted to explain the business realities and the various factors that go into these decisions, but Gabriel cut him off mid-sentence. According to the source, Gabriel said something along these lines: "This isn't about football anymore. It's about who brings in the money, and I understand the business side. I'm not Deion Sanders' kid. I don't have a famous last name, but I earned my spot here. I put in the work. I produced on the field, and none of that matters because Shedeur is better for the brand." Shedeur, according to the same source, stayed quiet through most of this tense meeting, letting Gabriel vent his frustrations without engaging or getting defensive. When Stefanski finally asked if Shedeur had anything to add, any response to Gabriel's accusations, or any perspective he wanted to share, Shedeur simply said with characteristic calm, "I'm here to play football. Everything else is extra." That response, measured and mature as it was, reportedly infuriated Dillon Gabriel even more. From Gabriel's perspective, Shedeur's casual dismissal of the entire controversy just proved that he doesn't understand or appreciate the struggle, that everything comes easy to him because of his name and his built-in advantages. And while Stefanski tried his best to play peacemaker and restore some sense of team unity, ownership's attention was clearly focused elsewhere, on different priorities that had nothing to do with soothing Dillon Gabriel's hurt feelings. The cold business reality is that Nike's partnership with Shedeur has boosted Cleveland's brand value dramatically in ways that are directly measurable. Shedeur's jersey sold out again overnight after the Nike announcement was made. Browns merchandise sales are up a staggering 40% compared to this time last year. A massive increase that directly impacts the organization's bottom line. The team's official social media accounts gained over 200,000 new followers in the past month alone, expanding their reach and engagement in ways that create real monetary value. Front office executives aren't blind to these numbers. They see them every day in reports and analytics dashboards. One anonymous Browns staffer, someone who works closely with the business operations side of the franchise, admitted candidly, "Shedeur is a walking billboard for this organization. He's doing more for this franchise off the field than most players do on it in their entire careers." The attention he brings, the engagement he generates, the way he makes Cleveland relevant in national conversations, that's incredibly valuable. If that reality pisses off Dillon Gabriel, well, welcome to the business of professional sports. And that's the cold, unforgiving reality that Dillon Gabriel is wrestling with right now. For the Browns organization, from ownership down through the front office, Shedeur Sanders is becoming a global icon, while Dillon Gabriel is realizing he's just another name on the roster, just another quarterback with decent stats, but no cultural cash. That's a devastating realization for any competitive athlete to come to terms with, especially one who's worked as hard as Gabriel has to reach this level. League insiders are already whispering about what happens next, gaming out various scenarios and trying to predict how the situation resolves itself. Could Dillon Gabriel actually request a trade, force the Browns to deal him to another organization where he might be appreciated differently? Would another team even want a quarterback carrying this much baggage? Someone who's demonstrated jealousy issues and potential locker room problems? And what does this ongoing drama mean for Cleveland's locker room chemistry heading into next season when wins and losses actually matter? One veteran player told reporters privately on Deep Background so he wouldn't be identified, "Look, I respect Dillon's game. He's a good quarterback who can make plays. But this tantrum over a Nike event, that's soft. That's not championship mentality. You want to prove you belong? You want to show Nike they made a mistake? Go out there and ball. Put up numbers that are so undeniable that brands have to pay attention. Show them through your performance, not through complaining about unfair treatment. Don't cry about it like a kid who didn't get picked for the team." Another player, someone closer to Gabriel, who understands his perspective more sympathetically, offered a different take. "People don't understand what it's like being in Shedeur's shadow. Everything he touches turns to gold, not because he's necessarily better at football, but because his name opens doors that stay closed for everyone else. That's got to eat at you every single day. You work just as hard, you produce better statistics, and you still get passed over for opportunities because you're not famous enough. That's brutal." This was supposed to be a quiet off season for the Cleveland Browns, a time to rest, recover, prepare for the challenges ahead without drama or distractions. Instead, it's turned into a full-blown marketing war and cultural controversy that's dominating headlines and threatening to undermine team chemistry before the season even begins. And the most frustrating part for Dillon Gabriel has to be that Shedeur Sanders is winning this war effortlessly, without even trying, simply by being who he is. Nike's Next Gen Football Showcase kicks off in 6 days. Shedeur will be there in Los Angeles, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with Nike executives and other brand partners, building his empire, and expanding his influence beyond football. He'll be networking with celebrities, creating content that will be seen by millions, cementing his status as one of the faces of the next generation of NFL stars. Dillon Gabriel will be in Cleveland during that time, watching from the sidelines, both literally and figuratively, seeing Shedeur's face on his television and phone screen, being constantly reminded of what he doesn't have. As one veteran player told reporters privately, with a mixture of sympathy and brutal honesty, "It's over. This team belongs to Shedeur now, even off the field. The fans want him, the media wants him, the sponsors want him. Dillon can fight it all he wants, but the decision has already been made by forces way bigger than any individual player or coach." The gut punch for Dillon is he sees the writing on the wall. That's why he's so angry. Not because he doesn't understand the situation, but because he understands it perfectly. The question now becomes, how does Dillon Gabriel respond to this reality? Does he channel this anger and frustration into motivation, using it as fuel to elevate his performance and force everyone to pay attention to what he does on the field? Or does this resentment fester and poison his relationships within the organization, ultimately leading to his departure from Cleveland? Can these two quarterbacks coexist on the same roster when one is getting Nike deals and cultural recognition while the other is being passed over despite superior statistics? This is more than just a quarterback controversy. It's a case study in how the modern NFL actually works, how marketability and brand value have become just as important as completion percentage and touchdown to interception ratios. It's about the collision between old school meritocracy, where production on the field determined everything, and the new reality where cultural relevance and social media following create opportunities that pure performance alone cannot. Browns fans, this situation is far from over. In fact, it might just be getting started. Closing hook / call to action. Is Dillon Gabriel justified in his anger about being passed over for the Nike event despite having better statistics? Or is he being immature and selfish by making this about himself instead of focusing on team success? Do you think Shedeur Sanders gets unfair advantages because of his famous last name? Or has he earned every opportunity through his own talent and cultural appeal? And most importantly, can these two quarterbacks possibly coexist on the same roster moving forward? Or is this situation going to explode into an even bigger crisis once the actual season begins? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, because this is the kind of controversy that defines narratives for entire seasons. Let's get a real conversation going about what matters more in today's NFL: production on the field or marketability off it. If you're Team Dillon and think he's getting a raw deal, make your voice heard. If you're Team Shedeur and believe he deserves everything he's getting, explain why. This is your team, your quarterback situation, and your future hanging in the balance. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the absolute chaos unfolding in the Browns quarterback room, if you appreciated getting all the behind the scenes details about what's really happening inside that facility, then smash that like button right now. It helps this content reach more people and brings more voices into this conversation. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on this developing situation. Because trust me, there's more to come. This story is nowhere near finished. The Nike event hasn't even happened yet. And when Shedeur is out there in Los Angeles living his best life while Dillon is stewing in Cleveland, who knows what's gonna happen next? You're gonna wanna be here for every twist and turn. Thanks for watching, and let's see if the Browns can somehow hold this situation together, or if it's going to completely implode.